The last transmission had been 6 years ago. They said Princess Lyra had perished in the outer colonies, swallowed by a rogue black hole that had swallowed the fleet she commanded. I had been a junior officer then, barely more than a cadet, but I remembered that day like it was carved into my skin. The palace had gone silent, morning drowning the halls in a heavy, unshakable quiet. Everyone moved like ghosts, pretending the crown hadn't lost its air, pretending the empire wasn't teetering on the edge of chaos. I never believed the reports. How could anyone survive that? A black hole wasn't like a storm that you could dodge. It was a finality. And yet, now, 6 years later, a signal blinked across my console in the middle of the night. It was faint, distorted, and unmistakable. The signature frequency could belong to no one but her. At first, I thought it was a trap. Pirates, insurgents, enemies playing on hope to lure us into a corner. But the emblem, etched in the subspace pulse, was unmistakable. A crown etched into a star, Lyra's personal insignia. My heart thumped with a strange mixture of fear and longing. I didn't tell anyone immediately. I couldn't. Not the fleet commanders, not the council, not even my closest friend, Eric. Some secrets were too dangerous, too heavy to share. Instead, I spent nights decoding the signal, tracing it across the edges of explored space, watching the waves of subspace energy bend like liquid under the influence of some unimaginable force. The location finally revealed itself, a forgotten system on the outskirts of the Andromeda Expanse, a place where charts ended and myths began. A single planet circled a dying star, its surface scrawled with jagged canyons and storms that shimmered in hues I couldn't name. And there, orbiting in a battered cruiser that bore the scars of battles I could only guess at, was her ship. I still remember the first moment I saw her. The communications array aligned with our subspace relay, and her image flickered into my quarters. She hadn't aged, not really. Her hair still fell in silver waves, and her eyes burned with the intensity one remembered. But there was something different. A coldness, a precision, a weight that hadn't been there before. "Commander Kale," she said, her voice like a blade cutting through the static. "You shouldn't have come." "I could not," I whispered, almost to myself. "I never believed you were gone." She studied me, and I felt the weight of 1,000 battles in that gaze. "Gone," she repeated, almost bitterly. "You have no idea what gone means." Her words were a key turning in a lock I didn't even know existed. She told me her story in fragments at first, broken across subspace transmissions and encrypted logs. The black hole hadn't been the end. It had been the beginning. Somehow, some impossibility, she had survived the collapse. The matter around her ship had folded time in ways that the science councils could never explain, and she had drifted through centuries and hours, witnessing the birth and death of stars, civilizations rising and crumbling in the blink of her eyes. "And now?" I asked, trying to ground myself in the here and now. "Why return?" "Because they've changed everything," she said. "And you need to know, the empire you mourned is not the one you left behind." When I arrived in the Expanse, docking her ship in a quarantined bay, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No aides, no guards, no protocol, just her. And she didn't smile. She didn't welcome me. Instead, she led me through corridors that hummed with a strange energy, a resonance I couldn't identify, to a chamber at the heart of the ship. The room was circular, walls pulsating with faint light, and at its center floated a sphere of unknown material, shifting and writhing like liquid metal. "This is the Nexus," she said. "It's how I survived. It's how I saw what no human should ever see." I stared at it, feeling a creeping unease. The surface of the Nexus rippled, showing visions. The rise of alien empires beyond the outer rim, planets engulfed by forces beyond comprehension, and shadowy figures, entities of pure energy, who manipulated galaxies like puppets. You saw all this? I asked, my voice catching. Yes, she said, and for the first time, her composure cracked. And the worst part? The empire you serve, it is on the verge of making a choice that will end millions. I returned to stop it. Her words cut through the certainty I had clung to. I had believed in the empire, in its order, in its promise of stability. And yet here was Lyra, the heart of that promise, returning to tell me it was all wrong. Then we stopped them, I said, together. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw the Lyra I remembered, fierce, brilliant, and unafraid. But then her expression hardened. Kale, you need to understand. To stop them, we might have to become what they fear most. The people we are cannot lead the war that is coming. I swallowed hard. You mean morally? Yes, she said softly. Everything you thought you knew about loyalty, duty, love, even time itself, changes when the universe is watching. And trust. Trust becomes a weapon as dangerous as any fleet or bomb. Over the next days, we planned. We infiltrated the Empire's council chambers via subspace gates, mapping the hidden alliances and betrayals. Lyra's knowledge, gleaned from centuries of drifting through impossible regions of space, was uncanny. She predicted shifts in loyalty, wars that hadn't yet begun, and the subtle manipulations of alien powers that hung behind the Empire like dark stars. But the more we planned, the more I realized I had been naive. The Empire was not corrupt in the simple sense. It was efficient, ruthless, and unimaginably entangled with forces I could not comprehend. And Lyra, she was no longer just a princess. She had become something else. Something both human and not, tempered by the incomprehensible, wielding time itself as a silent weapon. Then came the betrayal. Eric, my closest friend, had followed me, and somehow, someone had tipped him off. He confronted me aboard Lyra's ship, demanding to know why I had disappeared from the fleet. Kale, he said, voice trembling. You're with her? With that, whatever she is? I wanted to tell him the truth, to explain what I had seen, what I had learned. But Lyra's warning echoed in my mind. Trust is a weapon. Not everyone can bear the knowledge of what must be done. I had no choice. Eric, you don't understand. She's not what she was, and neither am I. We can't let anyone, stand in the way of what must happen. The fight was brief, brutal, and necessary. By the time it ended, Eric lay unconscious, and I realized, with a hollow feeling, that the boy I had called my brother was gone. The man who remained, I could barely recognize. Finally, we reached the heart of the Empire, the Council's central chamber, a palace suspended in orbit above a dying world. Lyra and I moved like shadows, phasing through security and bypassing defenses that were designed for men who had no concept of time beyond a few decades. When we finally confronted the Council, Lyra did not plead, did not demand. She simply revealed what she had seen, the machinations of the alien entities that sought to consume the galaxy, the chains of decisions that would collapse countless civilizations, and the role the Empire had unwittingly played as a pawn. The chamber froze. Ministers and generals blinked in disbelief. This cannot be true, one of them stammered. It is, Lyra said, voice cold as ice, yet resonant with authority. And if you do not act now, the Empire and everything it touches will cease to exist. For hours, we debated, argued, and maneuvered through political mazes that would have seemed impossible to navigate a year ago. I realized then that my role was not as a warrior or an officer, but as a witness, a vessel of truth that only Lyra could fully wield. At dawn, as the first light of a dying star filtered through the palace windows, the council made a choice. They agreed to follow her guidance, to restructure fleets, to sever alliances that would have led to ruin, and to confront the alien entities in ways that no one had thought possible. Lyra turned to me as the chamber emptied. Her eyes, now softer, carried a hint of the girl I had once loved. "Kale," she said quietly, "thank you. For believing, for following, for not letting the past define you." I wanted to say so much more, tell her that I had never stopped believing, that my loyalty had always been hers. But the words failed me. Instead, I reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of flesh and the pulse of something beyond human. The galaxy outside was vast, uncertain, and frightening. But for the first time since her disappearance, I felt clarity. I understood, finally, that the universe was not a place of certainties, but of choices. And Lyra, my impossible, eternal princess, had returned to remind me that some choices were worth everything. We left the palace together, stepping into a ship that would carry us to the next battle, the next impossible decision, the next confrontation with forces that no one had imagined. And as we broke orbit and the dying world fell behind us, I realized that everything I thought I knew about love, duty, loyalty, and time itself had changed. Yet somehow I did not fear it, because Lyra was with me. And if the universe had taught her to survive anything, then maybe, just maybe, I could survive beside her. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time in my life, I knew that survival was not enough. What mattered was what we chose to do with the time we were given. And with her, I was ready to face it all. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, each one a silent witness to what we had survived, and what we had yet to face. Lyra stood beside me, her hand warm in mine, the pulse of the Nexus echoing faintly through the ship. For a long moment, we said nothing, letting the enormity of what had happened settle around us. Then she spoke, her voice softer now, almost human again. "Kale, the galaxy will never be the same. And neither will we." I nodded, understanding that she was right. The Empire had been shaken, the Council reformed, and countless lives spared, but the path ahead would demand courage, sacrifice, and choices no one could predict. Yet for the first time since her disappearance, I felt hope. Not blind hope, not the fragile hope of those who cling to old certainties, but a living, enduring hope, tempered by what we had learned in the void. "We face it together," I said. Lyra smiled faintly, the kind of smile that reminded me of the girl who had once ruled a palace with fire in her eyes. "Together," she agreed. And as the ship leapt into subspace, leaving the dying world behind, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy had shifted, and so had we. But for the first time, I didn't fear the change. With her at my side, I could face whatever the universe threw at us. Wars that spanned centuries, enemies that moved beyond comprehension, and the endless, uncharted stars that stretched before us. Because Lyra had returned. And with her return, everything I thought I knew about time, love, loyalty, and the very nature of survival had changed. And somehow, against all odds, that change felt like a beginning.